All right. So I would like to thank the hosts, Miriam and the others, for inviting me and the African community. We've been dealing with a lot of hesitancy, especially in the Black community. I think it stems from a lack of understanding of really what the vaccines are and what they're meant to do, how they were developed, how quickly they were developed. So I will address some of those concerns with you. One of the pressing questions is how quickly the vaccines were made. And I'll address that head on. People say they were made too quickly, so they're still experimental and they don't want to be used as guinea pigs. But I'd like to assure you they were not. The process of getting even to the FDA for emergency use authorization and any of those agencies like the European Medicines Agency is a very difficult and harrowing one. First, the researcher has to develop a research plan. How are we going to do the work that we say we're going to do, what we're going to do, and that proposal has to go through something we call an institutional review board. Every university that does human subjects research has to go through that. Every point and every individual that you get consent from, we have to monitor them closely. Now, the institutional review board is not a bunch of scientists. It's a bunch of people in the community, teachers, ethicists, priests, pastors, community leaders. They will look at the proposal. They will determine if two things they must look for. First, we can do no harm. And secondly, whether that research that we're doing is going to be beneficial for the communities that we study. That is a very steep hill to climb, but in designing your research, you have your team together and you answer all of those questions to the very best of your ability. The vaccines that we have, some of them, I'll start with the Sinopharm and Sinovac from China and Russia. Those two use the old traditional way that we made vaccines. They took the virus, the SARS-CoV virus, and they attenuated them. They either heat-killed or chemically inactivated so that it is non-infectious. They inject that into your system and your body picks it up and makes antibodies against them. That's the old way. Tetanus and all these other vaccines that we have, mumps, measles, rubella, smallpox. So those two are the old traditional way. Then we have viral vector vaccines like Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca. Those use an adenovirus that causes a common cold. They inactivated it, but because it still maintains the ability to get into your cells, but they gutted it out of its DNA and inserted the DNA for the spike protein, which cannot cause infection of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. By putting it in there and using the adenovirus shell as a vehicle to get into our cells. When it gets into our cells, it releases the DNA inside the cytoplasm of your cell. Your cell is made up of different compartments. The cytoplasm is where most of the endoplasmic reticulum, all the parts of the cells are, except the nucleus. The nucleus is where your DNA resides. People say they're worried that the vaccines are going to mess with our DNA. It does not. The DNA is transcribed, and let me just give a little molecular biology lesson real quick. There's a fundamental tenet in molecular biology. It is that DNA is transcribed to RNA, RNA to mRNA, and mRNA is translated to proteins. For example, one of the things that we are familiar with is insulin. Before, we used to get insulin from cattle, bovine insulin. But that became very expensive. And also, people were having a lot of reactions to the components of the cattle. So what they did was took the DNA sequence from insulin, the insulin gene, put it into E. coli, a bacterium that can give us diarrhea, but it's also part of our natural flora. We only get sick from E. coli if we ingest it and if we get contaminated with it, but it is one of our parts of our normal flora. So by taking the insulin gene, putting it in E. coli, and having it make insulin all day long, that's why, although it's still expensive, but it's not as expensive as it would have been if we were still using bovine insulin. Same concept. AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson is the DNA for only the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. When it gets into our cells, inside the cytoplasm, nowhere near our nucleus, the cell picks it up, transcribes it into RNA, makes the RNA mRNA, and then the ribosomes in our cells reads it and makes only the spike proteins. When that is done, the mRNA, the message is destroyed, right? The DNA is destroyed, the mRNA is destroyed, and the spike proteins are sent to the surface of the cells. When they stick up on the surface of the cells, our immune cells come, the T cells, we have natural killer cells, macrophages, they all come to the cell and realize, hey, there is something foreign on the surface of that cell, and they mark that cell for death. By doing so, they make antibodies against the spike protein. Now you have the spike protein. Now remember, with those two, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, there's after the first shot, about 3 weeks to a month, you get your second shot. When the body first meets, somebody was, sorry, I just saw a comment come on there. When the cell first meets that foreign particle, the T cells, B cells, all of them get together and they work in concert to give you antibodies. Now, when the body first meets a foreign antigen, the first antibody that will show up is IgM, immunoglobulin M. It's a big antibody with 5 different parts. It is not a specific antibody. It's a generalist. It's kind of like a generalist in a hospital. They make up antibodies, then about 5 days later, IgG, immunoglobulin G, starts to build. Over time, that infection goes away and IgM goes down, IgG goes down, not all the way to a level where it disappears. The second time the body sees that, hence the second shot, the IgG ramps up to a very high level to overpower that foreign substance or organism. And at that time, it starts to build immunological memory. If you notice, SARS-CoV has changed a lot of what we understood about immunology. Because before, you would think that we thought once you got an infection, whether natural or immunization, that you could have memory. But SARS, you notice that people were getting infected 2, 3, 4 times. That started to get people thinking, what is going on? Why is it doing that? Well, I'll come to that later with the variants. So we talked about the Sinopharm and the Russian Sputnik 5 vaccines, the old traditional way. We just talked about and Johnson & Johnson. Now, one that is causing a lot of problems is the mRNA vaccines. They think it's a new technology and that it was made too quickly. Most likely they think it's most people say it's political pressure, but no. What happened with Pfizer and Moderna is instead of putting the DNA like Johnson & Johnson into a vector, they took the sequence and then with that sequence, they put it inside a little lipid layer. It's kind of like a cod liver oil tablet. We know that cod liver oil, most people cannot digest it. They would get sick and nauseated if they just drink the cod liver oil. So they put it inside a little clear layer, and then you can swallow it, that dissolves, and you get the cod liver oil. Well, they took fat, a lipid, nanoparticle, and people hear the words nanoparticle, and they think it's some metal. You hear people talking about, well, they put a magnet near there, somebody who took the vaccine and the magnet stuck. That's just foolishness. That's nonsense. That little fat layer, the reason it's in that fat layer is because fats on the cells, our cell surfaces, is lipids on there. So lipids bound to lipids and it opens up. And in doing so, it releases the mRNA. Now, mRNA is quite different from DNA. DNA, for anyone who has watched Forensic Files or Investigative Discovery, you see investigators going and looking for years and years and years past, and they can take the DNA and trace it back to either a loved one that you lost or someone who committed a crime. Because DNA is very, very stable. Hence the reason why we can go back billions of years and sequence the DNA of dinosaurs from their bones. It's very, very stable. mRNA, not so. It's a sequence of letters, but it's very, very fragile. So, and here I'm going to say the components of those vaccines, which all of them are almost the same. You have water, you have salts like sodium chloride that we use to cook. You have polysorbate 80, which is in ice cream. You can look it up, it's in ice cream, and a lot of those are meant to stabilize it. The salts are meant to keep it near the pH of our bodies. Remember, inside our bodies, the pH is like 7, like your blood, close to 7. We don't want it to get too acidic. You don't want it to get too basic. In balance. And you have histidine, which is an amino acid. All our proteins are made up of amino acids. All proteins, from insulin to everything else, is a sequence of amino acids joined together that gives the protein its shape and its function. So there is nothing sinister about that. Now, remember I said when the DNA gets in, DNA transcribed to RNA, trimmed to mRNA, and then to the protein, spike protein. But Pfizer and Moderna, outside of the cell, to get to the spike protein quicker, they used human cells and let the transcription go through all the way to the mRNA. Took that mRNA, packaged it in the lipid nanoparticle. So when it gets into your cell only has to read the mRNA. See, you stop 2 steps from DNA to RNA, trimmed to mRNA. So those were already done. And now you just have the mRNA sequence. The ribosomes read that mRNA and the spike proteins are expressed on the surface of the cell. Now, when SARS-CoV itself gets into your cell, it releases its RNA because it's an RNA virus. That RNA is translated into all the different parts of the virus, all in the cytoplasm, nowhere near your nucleus. Even SARS-CoV itself doesn't go near your nucleus. And it packages itself, so it hijacks our cell system, packages itself, and gets out of the cells and goes and infect other cells. Now, the receptor on our cells is an ACE2 receptor. Many of you, if anyone has ever had high blood pressure and they tell you they're giving you an ACE inhibitor, that is the receptor they're targeting, the ACE receptor. And those are very, very vital. They are now very vital organs. Our lungs, inside of the line of our blood vessels, our kidneys, our liver, our brain. That's where they're all over. So the virus found a way with the spike protein to fit exactly like a lock and key in there. And when it gets in, it fools our cells like it is something normal, and our cells open up and lets it in. Now, remember, you get the virus through your nose or through your mouth. Hence the masks. When it gets through, it goes through and goes inside of your lungs. And in your lungs, it starts to move toward a critical part of our lungs. The alveoli of our lungs, the lung sacs. If anybody has taken any biology class in high school or anything, you know that it's in the alveoli where the exchange of carbon dioxide for oxygen occurs. And right along the alveoli are your capillaries. You take those and it drives it through, and then remember, oxygenated blood goes to the heart, deoxygenated blood is sent back. That's where the exchange occurs, and then the heart sends the oxygenated blood to the parts of our bodies. Imagine with me for a minute, if those cells are destroyed, if I were to keep any of you in the room you're sitting right now, if I were to lock it and pump carbon dioxide in there, carbon dioxide will displace any oxygen in that room, and it won't be long before you start getting confused, you start getting headaches, and there is no life. COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, is destroying the lung tissue. The first thing we do when you come to the hospital is put you on oxygen through a line, a tube, at 1 to 4 liters per minute. Depending on the amount of damage that's been already done in your cells, that won't work. The next step is to use, if anyone hearing my voice understands or has sleep apnea, they would know what I'm going to say. They put you on something like a BiPAP or CPAP machine to keep you from waking up while you sleep. People with sleep apnea get very tired next day because they cannot get a good night's sleep. So they have to sleep with that machine that is opening their passageway and forcing air into it. Now we go from 1 to 4 liters per minute, and with the BiPAP or CPAP machine, 15 to 40 liters per minute. And it is forcing it down into your lungs. When that doesn't work, because of the damage that's being done, then that's the point at which a few things happen. The first thing is they get with your family and they ask you to probably make what may be your final call to your family, because they can't be in the hospital with you. They'd probably put you on FaceTime so you can talk to your family. And then they intubate you. Intubating you, they push that tube down your throat and anchor it with some saline, because people will pull it out. So now they have to put you in an induced coma. Just because if you pull that tube out, you laying there, you're not sure what's going on, so you pull, and it will damage everything going up, because that tube, it's a balloon at the end of that tube to keep it anchored. The space in your bronchi and your bronchioles coming up to your throat, you will damage that. While the virus is inside of your lungs and killing those cells, all our cells have a lot of fluid in there, in the cytoplasm, right? Think about when you get dehydrated. Even your skin starts to look like a prune. You start to build up debris and phlegm and the fluid from all the cells that are dying or dead, and it starts to build up pneumonia. We'll have to be suctioning you a lot, but we can't replace those dead cells. So you're on a ventilator now, and you're in an induced coma. They have to put a feeding tube in your stomach. They have to put a Foley catheter so that you can urinate. And they put a rectal tube, and we know what that's for. They have to turn you about every 2 hours. And I'm saying that from experience because I was a nurse. I was a critical care nurse and an emergency room nurse before I went into research. This is a fact. Not only was I a nurse, but I was a nurse in the US Army at the very time when HIV pandemic was out. So I know all about that PPE and those 12-hour shifts and the fear of going into a patient's room. And if you think that any nurse or doctor is going to be in there with you for any extended period of time, you're really delusional. Because I would get in there, know exactly what I had to do, get all my supplies, and make sure that I limit the time I am in that room. Because at that time, we didn't even know how HIV was spread. We didn't know it was sexual. We just know the thing was just making people get thinner and thinner and dying. And we saw a lot of it. Same way, COVID-19, we know it's infectious, so the nurses and the physicians are not going to go in there and spend all kind of time in there with you because they have families. They cannot take that thing home. My own daughter, my first daughter, is an emergency room physician right here in Cincinnati. They've got 2 kids, a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. And every time she has to go, thank God she has a basement, a walk-in basement, and a washer and dryer down there, so she can take her clothes off and take a shower before she can go see her family upstairs. Nurses and physicians have been at this for a year and a half. Working 12-hour shifts, hardly any vacations. No one can take a vacation. And so we prayed because we didn't know what COVID was doing. We didn't know how it was being spread. And people talk about that there's a lot of confusion. Scientists are not magicians. We're not gods. We have to study what's going on, figure out what is happening and how best to stop it. By getting the sequence, knowing the sequence, and observing the virus, notice that the spike protein is essential for it. You see that spike protein, anyone has seen, by now I think everyone should have seen what COVID-19 looks like, with all those spikes sticking up the surface of the virus. That's where it binds onto our receptors and gets in. If you block that, then boom, it cannot get in. If it cannot get in, it cannot infect you.
Sir, sorry.
Yes.
Your time is fast spent. Sorry, this is fascinating stuff, and I know you can go about it all day. I wanted to see if we actually can give room for questions, to get in some questions.
Yes.
Based on what you have brought up so far and what you discussed, profound information. On the chat, basically, I'm sure you've seen some of the things coming up. This is new information for myself. I've learned that a lot of people here. So I'll leave the floor now. I'm going to make it open for people to ask a few questions. And please, could you be on standby just to answer some of the questions if you can? Anybody
Absolutely.
have a question? Someone's raising their hand here. Safir, please go ahead.
Yes, Actually, my question is not more on the health side, but when COVID started, I believe majority of people were kind of shocked, because when we go to the social media and everywhere, we see people who are not even physicians coming with predictions about what's going to happen next after whatever amount of time, and things are happening exactly the same. So I truly believe majority of people are kind of shocked or scared of jumping into vaccine, because they wonder how comes not even physicians who were predicting those things about COVID pandemic when it started, but people who were completely out of health professions. So you can imagine, how can people just take it easy and decide to take vaccine while they saw all that before? Like people were predicting things and they were happening exactly the same. Even now they keep telling us this is coming next, this is coming next, and people see it comes. So people keep wondering, like, is this really pandemic or something created? What do you guys have to comment about that?
Okay, so you made a great point. Thanks for the question. You said physicians were talking, and we were not getting a lot of, there weren't a lot of, you weren't hearing a lot of scientists talking. I don't think a lot of physicians do the kind of research we do. So science is making a hypothesis, testing, evaluate, look at the data, retest, reevaluate until we get it right. What that virus was doing was changing. It was changing so that the whatever treatments or antibodies we use would not work, hence the variants. The alpha variant and the beta variant, they were not as they were not as infectious, number one, as the Delta variant. The Delta variant is about 1,000 times more infectious. And if you remember, just a few months ago, the CDC said those who were fully vaccinated didn't have to wear masks and didn't have to social distance. But because of what was going on, they found in the nostrils of people who were fully vaccinated, people who were partially vaccinated, and those unvaccinated, the same viral load, the same amount of viral particles. They were not seeing that before. So the Delta variant changed everything for us, so we had to go back to wearing masks, but it's not for us. Now, I want to make a point really, really, really clear. The vaccines were never, no vaccine on earth was ever meant to prevent infection. No vaccine on earth was ever meant to prevent transmission. What vaccines are meant to do is to prevent serious illness, hospitalizations, and deaths. Now, people will say, yes, there are deaths from the vaccines, from people who were vaccinated. And people are infected with after even getting the vaccines. But look at what's happening. The point that they're covering up for you is this. People who are fully vaccinated, unless they have serious underlying conditions, whether they know it or not, like diabetes, high blood pressure, that is rampant in us, Black people, then, or you are immunosuppressed, you had a transplant, then you are seriously at risk, even if you are fully vaccinated. And for people who are immunosuppressed, they cannot even make their own, the vaccines may not elicit the kind of antibody response that we want. Hence, you hear them talking about booster shots, especially for those groups of people, the elderly and people with serious underlying conditions. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, you have another question too. Crystal, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, good evening, Dr. Augustine. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us tonight. My question is about, I hear a lot of people saying that there is medication to treat COVID. Like they say there is low-cost medication options, hydrochloroquine, ivermectin, and so that's one argument I usually hear against the getting vaccinated. Like why the government do not use the low-cost medication that seem to work. So what is the truth about that? Because it's, yes, I hear it so many times, but yes, if you can share about that tonight, thank you.
Excellent question. And the answer to that is this. The people who are already, the people who said that COVID-19 was a hoax, are the same ones telling you now to go take horse medicine. Let's use logic. Hydrochloroquine, and it is one of the medicines they take in Africa, because in Africa there was malaria is endemic there. Malaria is a parasite. It is a totally different organism from a virus. Just like antibiotics won't work if you have a viral infection, why would a parasitic medicine work with the virus? Where is it working in the cell? They tried because they thought it may have had some properties, and they looked at it, but the results were negative. It does not work. As a matter of fact, it is causing harm, and it's causing a lot of harm even when you're taking it for malaria. Ivermectin is a dewormer. It's to remove her worms in cattle and in horses. The mechanism of action is not working. It doesn't work against the virus. Now, the one that is working is remdesivir. And I'll tell you how remdesivir works. Remdesivir, they changed one of the letters and anchored it so that when the virus is replicating its RNA inside of us, it blocks it when it gets to that point. And the virus itself has a mechanism of trimming it to correct it. But the way they hooked it up, it cannot do that. So now it stops all replication. The next thing they will give you is monoclonal antibodies. What are monoclonal antibodies? Those are antibodies that are specific for the spike protein. There are two types of antibodies, polyclonal ones, monoclonal ones. Polyclonal, we recognize everything. The monoclonal is specific. And how they got that? They got that from people who were either died or had serious COVID illness. And then they took those antibodies they found in them, and then they saw which one would stop and block the virus. And we call it neutralizing antibodies. And those neutralizing antibodies are the monoclonal antibodies that you have. The way those antibodies will make the same way that the vaccine induces, or the virus itself induces the body to make those antibodies. Same concept, same way. We just copied what the virus was doing, but we've been doing that for a long time. Remember, there was another SARS before in 2008. And then in 2012, there was the MERS. It's another SARS in the Middle East. And now we have the SARS-CoV-2. So ivermectin does not work. As a matter of fact, it is dangerous. There are a number of calls to the poison centers here from people who are taking horse medicine. The dosage you think for a horse or cattle is not the same. People are going to feed stores to get it. Right here in my county, Butler County, it's next to me, is where the judge forced, because a lady and a husband did not believe in the virus, they did not believe in the vaccine, so they got COVID. The husband got COVID, he's in the hospital on a ventilator, he's been there for weeks. And the judge forced the hospital to give him ivermectin. But the hospital physicians would not do that, so they had to bring in that outside doctor. And then another judge downtown Cincinnati overruled that and said, judges have no business telling a medical professional to give a drug that is not working and may be harmful. So those don't work. They are telling you to take everything other than the thing that is supposed to help you, the antibodies from the vaccines. Or if you get COVID, you will get monoclonal antibodies, but you have to get it real early, and you have to get with it remdesivir, and they will give you the zinc and everything else. But those two are the main things that are going to get you out if you get out, and it has to be done really, really early in the process. I hope that answers you.
Thank you, sir. That was excellent. Any other questions? No other hands raised so far? Okay, come on. Oh, okay, Charles has a question in here.
Hello, Doctor. That was a very nice presentation. Thank you so much. I'm really impressed, to be honest with you, sir. Thank you. Just a quick one. I have like 2 or 3 questions. I may not be able to go through all of them. But you said that no vaccine is being produced with the intention of stopping transmission. So there's this kind of rumors or this out there that the COVID virus cannot survive more than 40 degrees Celsius. So here comes this method that our people are using. They call it steaming. That once you come out, once you go out of your house, before you come in, take some hot, inhale some hot steam. Do you think that can work in preventing the virus from getting to our nostrils and to the lungs, finding its way to the lungs, if we practice steaming?
A lot of people who are doing that.
No, go ahead, sir.
Okay. A lot of people who are doing that in the very beginning. As a matter of fact, if you remember, at the same time they were saying that, they were saying if you drink hot ginger, hot turmeric, hot moringa, all those things, it would stop it. None of those things have been shown, but inside your nostrils, you have cilia. They're very, 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 they're the ones that if any particles stick, trying to get to your lungs, they will sweep it up and you'll cough it out. Now, you don't want to burn the inside of your nostrils. That's not going to work, especially with the Delta variant. It doesn't stay long in your nostrils. It heads straight into your lungs quickly. So sometimes, and to your point, sometimes you may have been infected with the Delta variant and you wouldn't know when they swab your nose because it's already down inside of your lungs. And you might come up positive, but you're sick. Those things don't work. How does the steam get inside of your lungs to stop it from destroying the alveoli of your lungs? The steam cannot get there, otherwise you're gonna burn your lungs up, which would defeat the purpose. So no, it doesn't work. Seriously, the one hope we have, and I'm not selling vaccine, I'm not even here on behalf of the federal government. I'm not here representing the EPA where I work. I am here doing this because Miriam and the others asked me, and I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting paid by any pharmaceutical or drug company. All I know is I know the science. I work in that field. As a matter of fact, let me tell you how much I work in that field. The saliva antibody test that they're using with COVID, I developed it. but I didn't develop it for COVID-19. I've been working on that since 2007, but for people who went swimming, and it's published. I have a lot of papers published on them. People who went swimming and we wanted to know what they were being exposed to. So I did it for Campylobacter, Helicobacter pylori, which causes stomach cancer and ulcers, for noroviruses that shuts down cruise ships. And the last one I just published in the middle of last year is for hepatitis A virus. So those things don't work. The vaccines are what you need, your own antibodies. You need something to prime your system to get it ready. So when the true virus comes in, that we can destroy it. And then that's now the reason why we said no vaccine was meant to prevent transmission or infection, because you have breakthrough infections. A breakthrough infection is just you have a bombardment of viral particles. Some of them must get inside your cell. The antibodies that you created from the vaccine will capture most of them, but some will get in. But the thing is, if you notice, and the reason why people without vaccinated people without serious underlying conditions, the reason why they recover so quickly is that when the virus comes back out to go and try to infect other cells, the antibodies are already waiting for it, and you might get sick for a couple of days, but you don't end up in the hospital on the ventilator. And look at the data. Every hospital, just look at the difference between the vaccinated and unvaccinated on ventilators and dying. That's a stark difference.
Thank you, sir. Another question?
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
He has one more question for you.
During that discussion, we were talking about the messenger ribonucleic acid being destroyed. We were trying to explain the mechanism, how the vaccine works. Well, I don't want to go into more details like that, but based on your own scientific research, you can say with all authority that the vaccine that we are taking, I've been fully vaccinated anyways, that the vaccine is not altering any genetic material in our DNA. So we can go ahead to the community and give that assurance to our people that they should feel free to take the vaccine. It's going to be with as of today, is the best way to be fully protected against COVID virus. So based on your research till date, you can tell us that with all authority that all those vaccines are not altering our DNA or our DNA at all.
Absolutely 100%. And let me tell you why you should believe that.
Okay.
As soon as the vaccines came out, my mom is 77 years old. My dad is in Toronto, not too far from you all. He's in Toronto, and he's about the same age. And I told them and my uncle, say again?
I said you were Canadian then.
My brothers and sisters are up there.
All right.
In Toronto. So I told them to hurry and go quickly to get vaccinated. And I could not wait to get mine. I was anxious. I couldn't wait. So why would I take something I know would alter my DNA? So that is the first thing. The second part is that the vaccines, and like I told you, everything happens outside of the cell, outside of the nucleus, in the cytoplasm of the cell. And that's where all that exchange happens. Now, let me just say something. I shared it with Miriam just last week. The American Association of Immunology, which is the global association for immunologists that Dr. Fauci is on, and Miriam can show it to you all. She has the proof on her phone. They asked me to be one of 6 members worldwide for the membership committee of the American Association of Immunologists. 6. One of the 6 of us is the senior director for vaccine research for Pfizer. She has Miriam has it. She can show it to you. And so for 6 people who are going to be like the gatekeepers to recruit and to bring people into the organization who are qualified, and also to go to conferences and explain to students and graduate students what immunology is. This is so big that I'm right there at the very top of the immunologist association and in that field. So no, it doesn't go into your DNA. I would never take something that was going to mess with my DNA. And I would never give my mom or my dad or my uncles and aunts that raised me. I was raised in Dominica, by the way, not here in the US. I'm from Dominica, between the 2 French islands of Martinique and Guadeloupe. So, moi, ça parle créole. Je parle français aussi.
Thank you very much, sir. There's another question here on the chat before we get to you, Sandra. It says, at what stage is it safe for a pregnant woman to get vaccinated? First trimester, second trimester, or the 3rd trimester?
Now, this is where I let professional medical doctors give out those kind of advice. I'm a scientist. I don't give medical advice. I would ask her to talk to her physician, her OBGYN, and the OBGYN, and then, but what we found though, is that pregnant women, the very first gift, pregnant women who are vaccinated, the very first gift they give to that baby is antibodies that they made from the vaccines against COVID-19. The baby's immune system is not ready, right? The immune system of a child doesn't develop until it starts developing after year 1. So from the breast milk, they're giving them the antibodies, and even through the placenta. So you already giving them part of the army you built against COVID-19 so that they can start fighting for themselves. Right here, just down the street, about 25 minutes from me, a young lady, it's on the news, I can send it to Miriam, and you can I was just reading it earlier. She is 19, healthy, young white woman. She got pregnant. She got COVID. She was not vaccinated, and they had to pull out the baby at 33 weeks and put the baby on a ventilator. And then she is right now on the ventilator fighting for her life. And her mom is crying to the community, telling them, I wish she had taken it. And the mom went and took it because they were all waiting. I don't know what else we're waiting to see. The virus is not waiting for us, and it's trying to change to try to keep killing us.
Thank you, sir. Now the next question is from Sandra.
Yeah. Hello, doctor. Thank you so much for that information. It's really very helpful to have scientific explanations made in a very simple way for our understanding. And my question is really on, and this is something that I think is more of an issue in the US, where the Black community has very little trust in the health system because of, historical incidences that have happened where they have been abused essentially by the system. And so it's no surprise that they're willing to embrace conspiracy theories that anything that the government is doing large scale in terms of health is designed to harm them. And it doesn't help when there's rhetoric at the beginning, like, oh, the Black community, because they're the ones who are getting affected, mostly should be the ones who should be vaccinated first. And everyone is like, what? So it's really, the messaging out there doesn't really help. And some of that, I think, trickles over to Black communities in Canada. And that's what I hear people saying, well, we don't know what the government is trying to do in our communities. How do we have these conversations with people who have very little trust in the government when it comes to healthcare?
That was an excellent question. That was the very first thing that when the virus and the vaccine came out at first, in the Black community, because of the Tuskegee experiments,
yes,
and the way and the racial inequities that we have here, things that this new administration is dead set on addressing. Because of that, a lot of people in the Black community were not trusting, and for good reason. But that is why a lot of us who in that field, we took it on our own to start to go to our community and say, look, this is not that. And we are sitting at those tables. As a matter of fact, one of the people on the FDA advisory board is from Meharry Medical College, Dr. James Hildreth, the school I went to, the medical school I went to in Nashville. Dr. Hildreth is one of those people who, together with Dr. Fauci years ago, they are two of the biggest HIV researchers on earth, period. And he's now the president of the school. Dr. Hildreth, and we are Black. Meharry Medical College is one of the oldest Black medical colleges on earth. And he's on that board, and we are making sure that this doesn't happen. Now, the misconception is now that we have been going out in the communities and we've been talking to our people. Yes, there is still some, but most, if you look, the highest vaccinated group in the United States now, thank God, are Black people.
Oh.
Wow.
Yep.
Good to know. That's good to know, but you know, for me, actually, the media still projects that Black people are still hesitating. And so
well,
this is the I think one of the challenges we are having here, even that we're having here. The information that is coming out in the media, as opposed to what is scientifically researched and found, are two different things. So a lot of misinformation.
Now let's talk about the media, right? Because when a Caucasian commits a crime, you hardly, and I was a news reporter before I was a news reporter, before I even joined the Army. What the media does is when it's them, you would not see, they would say somebody commit a crime, but for days and days, you're wondering who did it, right? And so, but as soon as a Black person commits a crime, our pictures are plastered all over the place, whether we're innocent or not. Think about it. It is true. We have to filter out all this garbage to get to the truth. If you also notice, anything dealing with minorities or Blacks is hyped up even more. But when it's good things, like Black people doing the calculations to send them to the moon, we don't see that. Or Black people having invented the cell phone that we're using, you don't see that at all. But it's time we are standing up, and we're going to push the positive things that Black people have been doing all over the world for a long time. Yeah. That is all part of the racism. But Black people, Black people definitely would not have listened to many Caucasians coming to tell them about any vaccine. But then we started to tell them, we understand, we are sitting there. It is Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett who was instrumental in the mRNA vaccines. She's Black, she's a young Black girl at the NIH. I can send those pictures of her with Dr. Fauci to Miriam, and she can share it, or you can look it up. She's Black.
Never heard of her.
Yes, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, Corbette. Just put Corbett and mRNA vaccine and she will show up.
B-E-T.
Yeah, B-E-T-T-E, Corbette.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're very welcome.
Our time is fast spent, and I'm pretty sure there are more questions, but we have to find a way to kind of wrap this up. I was going to touch on some other things, but I think we've pretty much got a sense of the challenges. Some of the myths have been debunked. We've got some education. We've got some information and re-information instead of the misinformation. Some of those have also been debunked, the misinformation. But thank you very much for the wealth of knowledge that you've shared today. I think the best thing to do is to find ways to actually keep sharing this information out there so that people can get vaccinated. And I'm hoping that people online, well, there's a lot of thank yous coming up to you, sir. Thank you very much for the information. I don't know what to say, other than to say that I think you've captured most of the items we had here. We were going to touch on the challenges. We're also going to get inputs from people. But the inputs that we're getting have been answered in terms of questions and misinformation debunked. So the next stages is how do we, the roadmap forward. So if you want to wrap it up with that roadmap forward, we'd appreciate that, a few minutes. Yeah.
So thank you to all of you, and thanks for the response on the questions. And I always tell people, Miriam is the contact, and I'm also the other person who emailed. They have my contact information. If the community has any questions, let them send it to them, and I will definitely 100%. I will answer them in detail and send them back to you, and she can share it with the community. I've been doing that all over the Caribbean, and I want the African community to know I owe you all a big favor, because one of my mentors, Dr. Pius Ende, he is an associate professor at Mihari Medical College, but he was a postdoc when I was a student. And that man, he has 2 PhDs. He's from Cameroon, and he was trying to get a postdoc in Germany. And they told him he had to do they wouldn't accept what he had. So he had to do another PhD in biochemistry, and he has one in molecular biology. And he mentored me. We are best friends. Whenever he comes up to Cincinnati, he comes over by me. And so another one of my best friends is Captain Kofi Ansah. He's from Ghana. We were together on the vaccination trail. Kofi is one step from becoming an admiral. Basically, one step from being a general. And we are best friends. He was in the Army as well. So I learned a lot from them, and I am very grateful for all this. And any questions you have, do not listen to the misinformation. It will get you killed. If logic will tell you, if someone is telling you, the people who told you that the thing was a hoax, and they, as a matter of fact, the same time they told us to put that heat up our noses, they were saying that because Africa and the Caribbean were warmer climates that we wouldn't get COVID. Think about it. It's the truth. That's what they were saying in the beginning. That is not true. The virus doesn't care about that. I know in my heart, the only way we get out of this, we have to build an army inside of us to fight this thing when we see it. People say, okay, there's 97%, recover. That may be true, but that is in pop statistics. And I think the host is an engineer, so he can explain statistics. They only work in populations. One-on-one, the reason I don't want to get COVID anywhere near me is because one-on-one, if you're not vaccinated, there's a 50-50 chance it'll kill you. But worse, the part I fear the most about COVID is the things that we don't know yet that is doing inside of us. People are worried about what the vaccines will do. Vaccines are one and done. They're not like regular medicines that you study over time. If you're going to have adverse reactions from a vaccine, it will happen within the first 2 weeks and no more than 4 months. And the 4 months was what they noticed with polio. After that, we have vaccines for everything. Some of our vaccines take 10 years, like tetanus, yellow fever, 10 years. I was in the army, I am pumped full of shots. And we had to take them because if an army goes out and people fall sick, you lose the war. So I don't know where all this is coming from. I have an idea, but this is not political. And for us in the Black community, let us save ourselves and our people. We went to school. My grandfather always used to say in Creole, "Éducation sans cervelle, c'est not," meaning education without common sense is zero. We have common sense. We go to the doctors and we trust them. We trust them all the time. We trust them for medicines that they give us a prescription. We never know what's in it. We never ask them. We just take the prescription, go ahead and try, take the pills. Now, in the middle of a pandemic, we have lost all common sense. We are trusting people. And here is, when you asked me about the pregnant woman, what trimester, I digressed because it was not my field. Now, because all doctors are not created equal. If you have a heart attack, you don't go to a brain surgeon, even if they say brain surgeons are brilliant. If you have problems with your teeth, you don't go to the best heart surgeon you know. You go to a dentist. And in the middle of a pandemic, immunologists, because it's the immune system, we know everything that's going on. I don't even know all of the things because there's so many research. I wouldn't have time to absorb all of it. But it is such a complex field. But what we know is this: vaccines have been working from smallpox to polio to tetanus to mumps, measles, rubella. Why now? And why are the same people who are telling us that the thing is a hoax are telling us instead, go take horse medicine, go take hydrochloroquine for a parasite? Those things don't work. Let's be smart. We have to be. Otherwise, I mean, our future be, you know, as a people, as a race. This virus doesn't care about anybody, just keep killing. And we shouldn't get involved in these people's political things. Now, if somebody was making a virus to depopulate us, and then they made a vaccine to save themselves, I am going to go where they're at. And if they're not giving it to me, I'm stealing it. The second thing is, that doesn't make sense, is if at first they said they made the virus to kill us. And now they're saying they make the vaccine to kill us as well. Which one is true? I mean, after they kill us with the virus, then they're going to kill us again with the vaccine? It doesn't make sense. And the people who are putting out those is 12 people on Facebook and on social media that are responsible for 65% of the misinformation. 12. But they are making boatloads of money as influencers. But people's lives don't matter to them. The vaccines are safe. I took them, I took the Moderna. And let me just share with you a little secret. Because the Moderna is mRNA, so I only have protection against the spike protein. The virus is trying to change the spike protein. It's trying to change so that those don't work. It's trying to change the shape of the spike protein. That's what the variants are. So that they usually bind like this, in a special shape. So if this were the spike protein and this were my receptor and they bind, if it changes like this and the antibodies are still like this, then it cannot bind. So I'd be screwed, and all of us that got the mRNA would be screwed. So my thinking is, if I can get the Chinese one or the Russian one, or even Johnson & Johnson or AstraZeneca, I'd prefer to take that, because I would like to have antibodies against other parts of the virus. Because if it changes that, then at least I'll have some protection against the other parts. The antibodies would bind it and prevent it from still going in. This is the way I'm thinking, and that I know a lot of immunologists thinking that way. But if it's the only one I can get, I will, because so far it has been those vaccines are effective, but the mu variant and the lambda variant, those two are getting closer and closer to vaccine escape, to make them not work. So we have to be, and the other point I would like to make before I leave you is this. The only way the virus mutates is in unvaccinated people. It cannot mutate inside of vaccinated people because it doesn't have anywhere to go back out to, unless the ones in your nose, but it has to be inside for it to change as it replicates inside of your cell. But because you're vaccinated, once it comes out, the antibody is destroyed, so it doesn't have anywhere to go. It's a dead end with us. So it's changing inside the unvaccinated people, and 99% of the people on ventilators and dying worldwide. Look at the data. It is, every country cannot be lying to you. Unvaccinated people. And in the fully vaccinated people, some people don't even go get physical. So how can I know what's going on inside of them? How do they even know that they have underlying conditions? Some of us don't even go to the doctor until something happens. And by the time that something is showing up as the symptoms, it has already been going on for a while. Many of you may have known some people that got cancer, and by the time they got to the doctor, when they felt something, the doctor told them it was too late. We've got to get vaccinated. Let's leave these other people, those that want to do politics, and it's usually some on the extreme right talking foolishness. If they want to die, let them die. We will still give them the information because they have it, but we got to protect ourselves. And if you have children at home that cannot get vaccinated yet, all the studies are showing the way to protect those are to have everybody around them vaccinated. And that's how we protect them. So going forward, close your ears to the nonsense. It is really nonsense. It's dangerous, because the one thing you never hear them, when they give you the misinformation, ask them one question. You are telling me everything not to do. How should I save myself from dying from COVID-19? And see what they give you. They will give you horse medicine, or they will give you something for a parasite that doesn't work, or tell you to go put yourself in a hot pool so that your whole body burns up.